You were not a you're a liar. You always steal it. Welcome back to the team room, everybody. I stole it from Peaches this time. It's me. It's Peaches. It's a good lifelong friend. When I say lifelong, I mean more than 20 years. He was an A1C, the biggest, thickest little A1C that you've ever seen back in the day when we were PhysTechs. Just a thick old neck, just straight thick. So, are you a major now, or are you still a captain?
No, I'm a major. I pinned on in I think 2020 or so. Yeah.
Beautiful Major Anthony Cosentino. Welcome to the podcast, dude. What's up?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I've been a long-time listener, so I hit you up. I was like, "Hey, man, you're having support guys on, and I haven't gotten a call yet." Like, come on, man. Come on, bro.
This feels like a good public service announcement. Everybody out there, if you're in the Air Force, you have an open invite to come on this podcast right away. It's already a yes. We will just schedule it. You don't have to DM us. You can just, hey, man, I want to come on the podcast. Guess what? You're in because we want to hear your story.
People be knocking down your door, dude, left and right. Like, hey,
no, they won't.
I'm in finance. I want to tell my story.
They won't.
You're in. They won't, because you'd be surprised. Everybody talks a big game. People want to do gangster podcast shit until it's time to do gangster podcast shit.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, we got you. So, man, Kaz, tell us about yourself. Start off with what brought you to the Air Force?
Oh, man, that's a good question, because I ask myself often, why I joined, and I think it changed over the years, or why you continue to serve. Honestly, I was just a shitty student. I really had
I just ran out of options.
Yeah, I had no really aspirations, right? My parents talked about military. I had a cousin who joined. My mom was doing all this research, and back this is like 2003, 4, and like the internet was there, right? But it was like shitty. So like you had like about.military.com that described what the Air Force was. And I went to talk to the Marine recruiter. He's like, "You want to be a Marine?" I was like, "I don't know, I guess," right? And just didn't really sell to me. Ended up calling my dad and saying I was a liar, because he was like, "Yeah,
I don't know, I guess."
Yeah, like, I don't know.
When that recruiter really motivated you, hey, you want to be a Marine?
Yeah, those Marines are all over it. My daughter just got her very first Marine recruitment thing in the mail yesterday.
Oh, did she really?
Like, whoa, that's weird.
Hey there, nipple dog. Chill out. She's 15. You want the wood chipper treatment, guy? Because you're going to get it.
Yeah, the crazy part is, too, is they say, like, we don't have to recruit. People just want to be Marines. Like, I get it. Yeah, okay, cool. At the Air Force at the time, they were not really hiring a lot of people that had not so great backgrounds. So I ended up having to get a waiver to get in. I got a fight in high school, typical school fight. So didn't know what I wanted to do. Joined the Air Force. They slapped a job on me called Aerospace Physiology. I had no idea what it was. Initially was classed to do air traffic control. I failed depth perception, which
nice.
Caveat to that, 15 years later, I end up passing it every year now for some reason. I don't know how. You can't gain depth perception, but
right.
Yeah. So
fun story about me. I've never passed depth perception. I've literally finessed my way through that test every single time. I somehow got approved during my initial flying class 3 to cross train.
Yeah.
Or I actually had a flight physical, but somehow got approved for depth perception with a waiver. And then I would just say that every time I went in. I've never passed that test. And every single doctor's like, "This is so weird. We can't find that waiver. We can see where they started it, but whatever." Yeah. Like at the end of 20 years, finally my flight doctor's like, "Hey man, that waiver never existed. You just said that your whole career. We're going to keep it to ourselves." And I was like, "All right, well, I'm retired now, so sorry."
Hey, life hack.
Apparently, you don't need depth perception to be a PJ. Or if you do, well, anyway.
If you move your head really fast back and forth in the machine, you can see it better. So
I heard that. I actually had a flight. I won't say what flight doc it says, but he just straight up told me the rules to the test. I won't put them out here because that would be me being a dick. That would be me putting inside information. But he was like, "Hey man, it's never this one and it's never this one. It's always, probably these 3, and you just got to pick."
Oh, I thought those were like the instructions. I thought that was like a known fact. Is that a life? That's a hack? Oh, okay.
I don't know. Apparently it was. He was like, "Listen, it's never this. It's never this." And in this first block, he was like, "It's never this one." And I'm like, "Okay, tight." And now I just got to guess between 2. Now I'm at a coin flip. Let's keep this train going, baby.
Like lottery, 50-50. I'm on the coin. Yeah. So this is 2005. I joined. I said job. Had no idea what it is. Enlisted, and first assignment was Andrews Air Force Base, and that's where I met a young Staff Sergeant Aaron Love, who was
a precocious young man.
Yes, in the midst of training to get back to the pipeline, and then I met some other mentors, and from there, kind of just catapulted. Like I just fell in love with the military, the Air Force. Just one big fraternity. I feel like very calm fraternity. And then just, like I said, fell in love with it. And I fell in love with the job. Aerospace Physiology ended up being something that kind of catapulted into like the whole health and fitness lifestyle that I'm into now. I got into some, natural bodybuilding competitions and such. So, I think I could have really done any job as long as I was around the right people. Aaron being one of them, Buddy, Easy Duran, Cisco. They were just, paramount in my, I say success. I think I'm successful, just looking kind of back at my career. So, and then let's see, 2010 or so, I finished my degree at the night classes. And then we had a lull in hiring aerospace physiologists to the officer side, which are now 13H. They used to be 43 alphas. And I can get into that whole transition out of the medical group. So I deploy. There's a lull in picking people up. I get back in 2012 or so, and my boss at the time, who was a crucial manager later on in life, he's like, "Hey man, put your application in." So I get picked up in 2012, myself and 2 other buddies who were prior enlisted, and I guess the rest is history.
Nice.
So yeah,
you got to go shoot somebody. I love hearing that alarm go off.
Oh yeah, no, I know. You get the family's home. They're in the backyard, but no, they're
that's awesome.
Shoot them all out.
I love it. Yeah, they're in the backyard. Sorry, guys, you're not allowed in, and the system is armed. So if you put that alarm off, you're getting it. We have standards at this house. That alarm goes off, somebody gets unalived at the front door. You know what I'm saying?
My daughter knows I'm not. I told her, "Oh yeah, I'm filming for a YouTube video." She's like, "You're going to be on YouTube. You're going to be famous." I'm like, "Well, I don't know about all that."
But you're going to be famous in a very niche category. You know who you're going to be famous with? 15 to 24-year-old dudes. Welcome to it, buddy. I'm going to put your info out there. You're going to get the DMs like we get. I want to hit something because I've always said this, every single time somebody asks me about how I train for the pipeline, I almost tell them that it wasn't fair because of those people that we grew up with that you mentioned. Yeah. That time, and the reason why I bring this up isn't to aggrandize myself or how I train for the pipeline. I do that enough as it is. The reason I bring that up is we talk about small teams. We talk about you get into the Air Force for the people, and we say that to the AFSPEC war hopefuls all the time. That PhysTech unit, Andrews Air Force Base, what was it, the 89th Aerospace Physiology Squadron, like way back in the day when it was, still all the old terminology and whatever, still under the med group, and we'll talk about that. Man, as a phys tech, I had leaders, I had mentors, I had people that would push me. I tell people the story about me training for the pipeline. I was like, man, I had this group of 5 heavy hitters. We had the wing commander, the first sergeant for the medical group, and then 4 guys that I worked with. We had you, Cisco, Easy, and then John Lando, Sergeant John Brother Lando. Yeah. Those guys, man, that group of people, y'all were there at the gym at 4:45, 4:30 every single morning. And if I wasn't there, you're like, hey, we noticed you weren't there today. What are you doing? Is that going to get you to be a PJ? Is that how things go?
You better be sick or dead.
Better
and
be
if you're
sick or
it better
dead.
Be like the flu.
Not at no special days. I distinctly remember, and I'm going to, man, this Peaches, I'm just going to mark this right now for Aaron being a douchebag. Man, I happened to win some awards I went through ALS at Andrews Air Force Base. I happened to win some awards, right? It was a good night. All of my friends were there. We had a celebration. I was back at the gym at 4:30 the next day because the last thing that the first sergeant, who I worked out with in the morning, he looked at me and goes, hey man, good that you took home some wood tonight. I'm glad that you had a couple beers. You better be at the fucking gym tomorrow at 4:30 because there ain't no special days. And I was like, God dang, man.
Mario Cefalo. Never forget his name.
Cefalo.
Yeah.
100%. That dude was like, hey, no special days. And I was there, and who did I see? I saw your 4 smiling faces in the morning, and that helped me prepare. But that's the sort of lightning in a bottle that we had as a phys tech back in that realm. But all that to say, how important was that for you in your Air Force career to have those people that you could look around and be like, man, these people aren't special operators. These people are, regular Air Force dudes that absolutely crush it. And yeah. I took so much from that group. How did that mold you in your career?
Oh man, if it wasn't for that group, I don't know. Like I said, I love the Air Force, but I mean, not only was there mentorship, there was like protection from like the toxic lead. I mean, we had some toxic people in that
sure.
flight too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it shaped me to who I was. I was a punk BC student, joined the Air Force, needed direction, and I got that direction. And I mean, I'm forever thankful for that because those moments I now use like for my mentoring. Like how was I mentored? And I know times have changed, generational changed and such, but I try to look back on that, like, man, just being a people person, just getting out, just knowing, inviting people to things, right? Like this whole like fraternization and unprofessional relationships, like. I think people get so wrapped around the axle on that, but like if you just are a human being and you're kind to people and you invite them at the lunch once in a while, you don't make it weird. You know, I mean, Cisco was lieutenant. Easy and you were E5s. I was at E2, E3. And you guys took me under your wing. And when people are like, oh, yeah, I don't know, that's a bad idea, though. You're like, hey, like, we're keeping it professional, right? Like, I knew I would call you guys by your rank and your last name, but I wouldn't cross that line, especially at work, you know. And I think that takes some maturity as well, you know, from both sides.
Yeah. Well, it definitely takes some situational awareness because you know, where the environment I work in now is very much a call sign driven, you know, that's what we use. And, you know, it's fine in the office, but then when you head out, you know, somewhere else on base, or you had some, you know, at other meeting with other organizations, and then, you know, I've got to make sure that I'm calling other people by their rank and their name, not whatever call sign they have. Same with people talking to me. It's just a weird kind of thing, just to show that there is a delineation in rank. And honestly, I don't care. I really don't. It's the other people, because I've already been talked to by other people.
I've been talked to.
Hey,
I've been talked to before.
I've been talked to about, like, hey, you shouldn't let them do it. I'm like, oh, well, everybody knows me as that, so it's just kind of the way it is. But I will make sure that I call other people that their appropriate rank and that kind of stuff, because some people care. You know,
they do, but you know, I think that by you knowing when to do it, when to turn it on and turn it off, makes you like more in the fold. Like, they want to bring you in, they want to hang out with you, like they don't mind grabbing a beer with you because they know they can trust that you're going to separate that. And that's key, I think. And that's something I definitely took from that, was being able to separate, you know, work life, military life, and being a human being.
Well, that brings up something else. And before I hop into what an actual PhysTech does and all that kind of stuff, do you think, sorry, Aaron, I'm bogarting this a little bit. Do you think that the gap between officers and enlisted has closed, or do you think there's still a large gap like there was back in the, you know, 60s, 70s, 80s,
I
90s
love the
even?
question. I watched the past podcast about fixing officers. I loved it. I mean, I was like, I wish I had a notebook. I was going to take notes down. No, I love it.
Careful, Cos. Careful, baby. Man,
yeah,
you're gonna put it out. Listen,
you're gonna get P&G'd.
Dude, we have got we have P&G'd. Imagine getting Cos kicked out of his career field for saying he loved the fixing officers. Listen, the fixing NCOs episode isn't going to be good either. The dudes were harsh on it, and we just laid it out, but it's polarizing. So go ahead.
I thought a lot about this, like, hey, make sure you're careful what you say and, like, you don't piss people off. But I'm also, you know, further in my career, so.
But you ain't got that much time, baby.
Yeah.
You say whatever you want.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm definitely careful still, though. Just to get more political, I guess, as you higher you move up. But no, sure. I think the gap has closed. I think that we're not in those trenches, right? Like, that's where, like, officer, enlisted was, you know, those lines were drawn back in the trenches and, like, true warfare, right? And I think things are a little bit different now. I mean, hell, just the fact that we're bringing warrant officers on, like, there's so much changing. And I think when I listened to y'all's that episode, I was thinking, you're right, things are closing. People join PhDs, enlisted join PhDs, and it's like, what separates a PhD A1C from a bachelor's degree in underwater basket weaving lieutenant? Like, that's the difference. Right. And when we get into the specifics of my career field, I mean, it definitely is super close. I mean, we used to have, before we that's going to be a tangent, but officer blocks and enlisted blocks, that's what they're called, right? And now we all teach the same thing. So, like, what is the difference? I mean, there's a huge pay gap. There's a huge, gap in authority and respect, but the job is very similar, you know?
Yeah. And it's a gap in roles too, right? And so if we're going to take it back to the aspect war, you know, part of it, and not just aspect war part of it, but much of the Air Force, your tacticians, your everyday people that are doing the everyday mission, you know, whether it's turning wrenches, whether it's doing security force stuff, whether it's doing aspect war stuff, PhysTech stuff, you are the one actioning. You are the hands-on doing all that kind of stuff. You are, no kidding, the expert in whatever that specific thing is. That is the enlisted side of it. The officer side of it has oversight. They are the ones, you know, responsible. They are the ones held accountable. They are the ones that have the authority, and they are, you know, certain sets of, you know, G-series orders. They have to be the commander or whatever, you know. They're also the ones that are, when things go wrong, are going to be held more accountable, or at least at a more severe aspect if something goes wrong. So You got that. Yeah, you're right. It used to be the education thing, but there are so many people now that just they come and listen. They've already got degrees, bachelor's, masters, and it's because they want to be the person with their hands in the freaking mix, and they want to be that expert, fully acknowledging that later on down the road they could potentially just, hey, I already got my degree. I could just go be an officer if I want to go be an officer.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, man, I have evolved. First, I'm going to go on a tangent, just a quick one. So do you understand why that we have the system of officers and enlisted that we do? You know what that's modeled after? It's modeled after the caste system, because nobles used to command the serfs and they used to go out. And then as a serf, as an enlisted guy, that's why you're not allowed to fraternize with officers, because the sweaties are not supposed to cross the line and go talk to the nobles. Like that's what that's all based on. Like no kidding, like the French caste system from way back in the day. That's where fraternization comes from. And if you ask anybody about, the history of the officer corps in the military, that's really what it's based on. And I don't know if you guys noticed, but man, I'm not in agrarian 18th century France right now. There's no nobles, right? Like my officer has a degree from the American Military University in finance.
That is a prestigious university. I went there.
He doesn't. I'm also alumni.
Yeah.
Got both of you.
Yeah.
You guys don't have castles, right? I'm not your serf, right? Like that's why the gap is closed. But I think it's important for that gap to close, because I think it does, like just like you said, man, it helps people get there. I don't know how many messages we get where people are like, oh, I can't figure out if I want to be a crow or a PJ and I've already got a degree. And we're like, it's totally okay to be an enlisted guy with a degree. It's totally okay to have an entire career, do the enlisted job, and then go, you know what I'd like to do? I'd like to have a better retirement for my family. I'd like to lead in a different way and see this from the other side of the fence. And I'd like to go be an officer.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, I think didn't you have a degree or close to when you were going through?
I had a bunch of it. Like I'm a weird dude. Long story short, I don't have a 4-year degree. I never got one. I have enough credits for it. If I ever went to a school and applied it, I think it would take me like one semester of applying all of my credits that I've accumulated at this point over the time that I've been in. But I didn't value it because I liked being an enlisted guy. So unfortunately, I never completed that. But maybe later in life, buddy, maybe I'll go get that American Military University degree.
Yeah, you can hang it up in your wall in your office.
Absolutely. Oh, you majored in international relations at American Military University. Be like, yeah, it was the hardest 2 Tuesdays a month of my life.
all those posts I was doing.
I can't believe I'm giving them that much shade. They're a great organization.
Yeah, they are.
Nothing bad to say about them, and I'm just out here decimating them on a random.
Because have you ever? This brings up a good point. Golly, man, I'm not even talking about PhysTech stuff. Have you ever been, as an officer? Have you ever been asked where you went to school or what your GPA was in school?
Definitely where I went to school. So initially, when I just had static line wings on my uniform, I expect, oh, you're Academy guy, because there was a lot of guys going through that, and it was almost like embarrassing. And nothing wrong with the Air Force Academy. You guys had your let's get rid of it, or that was Trent's thing, let's get rid of it. Like I think there's value in the Air Force Academy. It's a great institution, right? But that's a whole nother topic. But yeah, often it was like, where do you go to school? And I do ask officers from time to time, more as a conversation piece. Oh, where'd you go? Because if they were Embry-Riddle guys like myself, I was a worldwide campus guy, so I went online, and on base there. But I don't do it from like a pedigree perspective. Oh, where'd you go to school? With my nose in the air.
Right.
Yeah, but I have seen that. I have seen
That's kind of what I was talking about, and I'm rooting in based off of we've got some seniors that are going to be graduating high school here real soon that are trying to decide whether or not to go to college, whether to go into the military. We also have college seniors that are so worried about their GPA, high school and college, that are worried about their GPAs and all that kind of stuff, and where they went to school, and like, hey, I'm going to go do my general studies here, and then I'm going to go to whatever so that I can have a better name school. And it's like, hey, guess what? When you graduate, nobody cares. No one cares. Mm-hmm. Now you want your GPA to be higher, just in the way that, say, if you're an enlisted person and you're wanting to go be officer, they are going to look at your GPA.
Yeah.
But that's it. That is it. Nobody cares.
Yeah. They don't care about schools. I mean, even in the civilian sector, I mean, I know mostly schools is for networking. I mean, people who go to like Texas A&M, for instance, like they go to a business, they go to an interview at an oil and gas company. Guess what? They're going to get hired because they're an A&M Aggie, right? That's just the way it is. Has nothing to do with the school and how good your degree is, honestly. I mean, GPA is very, very important because it makes you competitive. But
the higher education establishments right now, they're there for credentialing. Like they are there to be a gatekeeper. When you say you go to Harvard, you don't get any different education than Embry-Riddle. If you're studying the same topics, you might have a different like professor that's a little bit smarter on it, but most likely not. But really what you're doing is you're getting that piece of paper that says Harvard on it. You're getting that piece of paper that says Yale on it. You're getting that piece of paper that says Texas A&M, and you're doing it for a reason. So there's utility in it. But really at this point, the brick and mortar, I tell, my kids, and then any advice that I give to anybody that hits me up directly, I'm like, listen, brick and mortar colleges, they're really not as important. Like, unless you're going to do something like law, unless you want to get into these circles like politics, you really don't need the piece of paper to say a certain thing. You just need to get the requirement down so that you meet the requirements and get in. But that's just one dude's opinion.
Yeah. Sorry, I got us off on a tangent, but I had to ask that. So what's a PhysTech, and what does PhysTech do?
Yeah, there you go. So
let's go.
I know we only have a limited time in this. The description of aerospace physiology could take weeks to describe.
It could. Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's different. And when people are like, "Hey, man, can you recommend a job?" I'm like, "Man, I still recommend PhysTech." I'm like, "Dude, PhysTech was a dope job." Anyway.
Hidden gem. So we are there to gap between, basically, we have 1 foot squarely planted in science and 1 foot squarely planted in ops. And the way it was described to me early on was we combine those two. So we're the subject matter expert in those two realms, and we bring them together and we educate aircrew on the effects of altitude. And you guys, obviously, your backgrounds have been altitude, and you've dove, and it's very austere environments. And so we're training people for that. And we have different areas and aspects of our job. I'd say the bread and butter for us is hypoxia training. So we use the altitude chamber as our main training device to get people hypoxic in a controlled environment, and they feel the effects of altitude in their body, not just their hypoxic symptoms, but also the change in pressure in their ears and sinuses. And then we just give them the tools for them to understand, like, hey, this is what it's going to feel like. Here's kind of how you deal with the situation. And then this is obviously the corrective procedures, and then we move on. So that's just one aspect of our job. I mean, we're the jack of all trades, master of none. We also have acceleration. So we put people in a centrifuge, and we teach them how to do the anti-juice draining maneuver and how to deal with the effects of acceleration in fighter jets. So that's also niche. And then we've got other aspects. A big actual manpower pull from our whole career field is the Beal mission, which is the U-2. We actually maintain and service the pressure suits, the spacesuits that the U-2 pilots wear. So we have, I want to say, about 60 enlisted positions there and a few officer positions. And then we have an altitude chamber there, and we test the suits and bring people to altitude in those suits to test them as well.
Yeah. So I'm gonna hit some stuff here because I want to translate it, because I know the audience and you don't. I'm already hearing the comments flowing in about what does this mean?
Yeah.
So the hypoxia training he's talking about, when you're a jumper, when you're going to high altitude, because of the pressure, not because of the oxygen, you lose oxygen in your blood. Okay. If there's not a lot of oxygen out here, oxygen comes out of your blood. You can't take in oxygen. What happens when you can't take in oxygen? You pass out, right? When you're a jumper, you go to the altitude chamber, jumper, flyer, anybody, and you're going to be exposed to altitude. They actually expose you to that altitude, to the lower pressure in the hypobaric chamber, meaning low pressure chamber, and you get to feel hypoxic. So you get to feel those symptoms come on. So when you're on mission, when you're in the plane, when you're about to do a jump from 25,000 feet and you start to feel those symptoms, you can go, hold on, something's wrong. Kaz mentioned it earlier, but there's also going to be a PhysTech on board that aircraft, high altitude airdrop mission support technician. I don't think have they changed the name? I bet they have.
No, it's still the same. Yeah, HAMS is the same. Yeah.
Yeah. So you actually have an enlisted PhysTech or an officer, physiologist on board, and the jumper will alert that oxygen person, like, hey, I'm having a problem. Well, they train you and they do all of these things. They work the dive chamber. The Beal mission is awesome because you get to drive a Camaro and chase down a spy plane, which is not even a joke. Like, that's an actual thing. You get to tear down a runway at 90 miles an hour, chasing a spy plane that just landed to get the spacesuit guy out that you helped get into the airplane. These are all things that PhysTechs do, and it is mind-blowing when you get into it. The schools that you get to go to and all that other stuff. Let's talk about the pipeline, man. So you got into the pipeline, or you got into the Air Force. You hit basic. The PhysTech pipeline is how long, if folks want to get into it?
So it's for PhysTechs, it's going to be 6 weeks. When I went through, it was at Brick City Base, which was BRAC in 2005, and now all training for aerospace medicine is in Ohio. Aaron's home state there. Yeah, I got a little OH.
IO. It's right pat though. It's the other side of the state. Like I only F with the if you draw it into 4 quadrants, right? I'm only that northeast quadrant. I take Columbus north and Columbus east. That's where the 2 lines originate, and it's everything in the northeast there. So
my bad. Those territories up there. Yeah, you gotta rep your set. I get it.
Come on, dog.
Yeah. So 6 weeks. Yeah, they're in. Now it's in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. It's a pretty short tech school. A lot of it's on-the-job training. Officer tech school is, I believe, 8 weeks, same place. We run 1 a year. We don't get a bunch of sessions. So very short, not super long. A lot of it's on-the-job training because we do a lot of PowerPoint instruction. So we become instructors, master instructors. And that, of course, requires, to go through basic instructor course, BIC, and then just get in the classroom and just teach. Because, really, sometimes we pick people up, especially enlisted, they don't really vet them for how good they are in front of a class, and they get in and they're just like babbling idiots, and I'm like, man, this is crazy. Like, and then I meet this young finance airman, and I'm like, God, you would be great at this job, right? Like,
yeah. So and that is a crazy thing too, is they never, when I was getting, obviously this is, I picked PhysTech as I failed out of the NDOC course the first time, and I had to pick something to do. But you're dead right. The job is so diverse that they don't put a high value on that instructorship, because the first thing that you're going to do when you're a PhysTech is you're going to instruct. You're going to get in there and you're going to instruct air crew. You're going to, as a young A1C, and you know this better than anybody else, you're going to be thrown in front of 15-year operators that this is their 3rd or 4th time that they've seen your curriculum, but it's your first time teaching it.
Yeah.
So that's like, that was something that I said, and like, wait a second, like this is recurring training. I'm going to step in and teach an 06, something that somebody else has already taught him 4 or 5 times during his career, and that he has already personally experienced over thousands of hours of flight. Oh, cool. That's not a hard thing to step into, but the instructional aspect of that is really, really intense. And I don't think people track how hard it is.
I'm about to catch a lot of hate for this. I know it because I know listeners.
Okay.
A lot of what we do and talk about is very closely aligned with what SEER does. As far as instruction goes, and I always joke and say we're SEER the sky, right? It just pisses off SEER above us, right? But essentially, they are phenomenal instructors. If you go sit through a SEER class, they are just great instructors. And I really wish that more people in the crew field would take that and be like, all right, I need to get to that level, because a lot of it's presentation, right? Like, my thing is humor. I know Aaron's like humor and just like knowing and being a subject matter expert. You got to find your niche. Some people play funny videos. That's cool and all, but you got to relate. It's funny whenever I teach a class full of PJs, but you remind me of somebody. There's this guy, he's a PJ. And when he gets Aaron Love, yeah, you're just like them.
Oh my
God.
God.
And I was like, oh, there we go.
Oh no. I'm so sorry, man. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Sometimes it's good. Sometimes like, oh man, that's my boy from back in the day, went through the pipeline. Other people that One's Ready podcast. I've seen it one time,
Right. Hated it. I gave it a thumbs down and a shitty 1-star review.
Yeah.
Went on with my day. What a piece of shit. What are some of the other opportunities? People talk about schools, right? So you mentioned going to jump school. You're a Freefall Jumpmaster. I told Peaches this story, crazy 20 years later story. I had to go back through a formalized Jumpmaster course in 2020. And there was my man, Cosentino, that was then a captain. But what are some of those other schools that PhysTechs get trained on in order to build that subject matter expert base?
Yeah, so we already mentioned static and free fall. Those are kind of the unicorn. They are hard to get into, especially dealing with the pipeline. But we go through all the safety courses. So aircraft mishap investigation. They want us to be safety investigators. So anything that a safety investigator for a Class A mishap would do, we go through those schools. Risk management. Let's see what else we've got. We kind of delved into hyperbarics for a while, so dive chamber. We've kind of divested that mission, but for a while people were getting that. That's a really good certification. People will go to personal training courses, and then of course now, as being air crew, we go through all those. We go through SEER, SV80, and now parachuting, non-parachuting, emergency escape. Let's see what else we go through.
Dunker.
Yep, Dunker.
Yeah, parachuting. Yeah. So back in my day, right? So back when I was a PhysTech, man, I got my pipeline, my pararescue pipeline was way shorter than the normal pipeline. Like I actually was able to have a kid and take like a 6-month break in my pipeline. Like I had my son while I was in the pipeline, because I got so many schools. Airborne, SEER. So that was, SEER combat survival. I got the advanced SEER course when I was up there. I also got to go to Arctic survival. So that was an awesome one. We got to go up to Eielson.
Yeah.
Parachuting and non-parachuting water. We got Dunker. I got to go to the centrifuge. I got to go to Freefall school. Got to go to all these other schools that were, that were on the docket, especially for instructional stuff. Because again, you're not tracking all that as well. And let's talk about the other kind of stuff that you get into, because you kind of talked about it a little bit. So from the ops side of it. So we talked about the science side of it and the teaching side of it. From the ops side of it, as you go out and you support those missions like we talked about, where you're supporting those high altitude operations as a HAMS tech or as the phys tech that rides on board the plane. What's that progression like, and how is that mission fleshed out? Because it recently just moved, from a nebulous location. You guys finally consolidated down at Little Rock and consolidated the program. That's happened over the last couple of years. So just talk about that mission as a little bit.
Yeah, and actually, since that move, it's actually moved again. So
tight.
Yeah, so when you came to our course, it was at Little Rock Air Force Base. It was put there initially to deal with had the C-130s, had the airlift, had the capability. So high altitude air mission support being one of our niche categories. It's not really a shred out, but essentially it is. We just don't call it that.
Sure.
So now that whole program was moved to Charleston under AMC A3, and so they report directly to the command up there, and that training in essence takes about 6 months. They run 2 courses a year. It takes 6 months. You have to go on several sorties, and you have to go to certain altitudes. So anytime a aircraft goes unpressurized above 18,000 feet mean sea level, there's got to be a phys tech on board, 1 or 2 or more, depending on the amount of jumpers or cargo or such. Being that the C-17 has a specialized mission there, that's why they moved the program from Little Rock to Charleston to be part of that package in case they have to blow out or whatever.
Nice. So I'm going to put this out there. Do you know who the first graduate of the very first HAMS course ever was?
I mean, his name probably starts with Aaron.
It really does. It really does. Dude. And it was John Busby, Chief John Busby. Mm-hmm. It was Chief Joe Montalvo, and it was I'm blanking on his name, Jermaine Williams.
Yeah.
Those 3 dudes took me to Herbie and basically ran the curriculum that started off the HAMS program. And as a joke at the end, they were like, "Congratulations, you're the first student of this HAMS." Like, it wasn't approved or whatever else, but I've made that joke and whatever else, and then like it's actually a true statement.
It is a true statement.
I actually did go through the thing. They validated the thing. They gave me the certificate and everything. Like, yeah, congratulations, you're a HAMS team member now. You're our first one. You validated the course. Like, I went TDY with my chief from Andrews. He was like, "Hey." At Herbie, and John Busby, man, that guy was awesome. John Regan Busby. I don't know where the legend in the career field.
The legend, yeah. He was like the guy. He was the first one I saw the freefall wings. I was like, oh my god, I want that, right? I was like,
yeah.
How do I get there? And typical like just the old school senior NCO. He's like, you gotta work hard and blah blah blah. And,
love it. I do as an old school dude.
Like not actually how to do it, just like gotta work hard. Like cool, like that's
You just gotta want it. That doesn't help me, Chief. How do I apply? You gotta work hard. Is there a button that I hit?
I had some computer issues earlier, so I don't know if hopefully it'll show up on the post. But one of the things that I did want to ask you, taking a little step back,
turns out he was right,
because you were talking about the instruction. What would you like characteristics wise? Like, who are you looking for? Who do you think would be a great candidate for PhysTechs? Because you mentioned SEER, and they're hopping in doing public speaking, and so that's the aspect of it. People are like, okay, well, SEER is only just out in the field. No, they're in the field. They're classroom instruction. You guys are doing classroom instruction. You're doing things, instruction on the plane, in the centrifuge. So what are the characteristics that you're looking for when it comes to PhysTechs?
Personally, and I have no other way of describing this in a personality trait, but a bro and a broette, man. Like, I'm telling you, if you can just bro out and just relate, like just being relatable and just being able to talk to people. Like, we have some people on our curriculum, man, big brains, like PhD level, and they just cannot formulate a sentence that makes sense. Like, I know Aaron had to kind of decipher what I was talking about with the crew fill, right? Because I'm talking to an audience that doesn't know it. But like generally, like speaking, like if I could describe hypoxia to a brand new career enlisted aviator, I'm going to break it down and he's going to understand it on like a very low level, not because he's a low level thinker, just because it's a very scientific thing. So I really instill in my lieutenants and young airmen, like, just talk to people, just like this podcast, right? It's just a conversation. You're not interviewing me, like you're not instructing. For the most part, especially with the brand new pipelines that we deal with at LACFM with the career enlisted aviator and special warfare, it's aerospace physiology 101. Right, you're giving them the building blocks because they're going to forget half of it anyway, and I understand that, right? Like people retain 10% of what you teach anyway. So I heavy hitters, like you need to hit the main points and then move on, right? Don't spend all this time like, well, the hydrogen bond and the blah blah blah. Like nobody,
the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve will hit a point of diminishing returns at about 17%. Like, what are we talking about, guys? That doesn't help me. That doesn't help me.
Cares. What, like one out of every 400 students will put on the critique like, oh, I wish we went more in depth on this topic. Like, and I'm like, all right, bro, like I have a nutrition background, but you have nutritionists in your squadron. Like, I'm not going to spend 3 hours talking about it. So once again, just boiling it down, just conversations. And I see it when people show up to my flight or I see physiologists. I'm like, oh yeah, he's going to be a good instructor. I can just tell because he's a person. He's personable. I mean, yeah, because we just get people that join the Air Force, they give them a job, right? And they never ask them, oh, do you like public speaking? That's never asked in the interview process that I'm aware of. And so I have people film themselves and watch their awkward pauses and their awkward hand gestures and their pacing. I think that's key. I'm a visual guy, so I need to watch myself. And then we just get them in the classroom over again. And no matter what, we still have just really bad instructors, right? And then as a whole, there's only 300 of us. So if you go to a class right for your 5-year refresher and someone just bombs it, that's your picture of aerospace physiology. So impressions are big.
And you only get once every 5 years. Yeah. That was the other thing that was a crazy thing with us and that was instilled in me. And it was Cisco. We've mentioned his name a couple of times. Cisco happens to be my son's godfather. That's how close we were. I love that dude. Him and Mindy, all those folks, that whole circle of folks back in the day were really, really good. But he gave me one of the best pieces of advice ever. He was like, listen, man, your impression that you're about to make is going to last for 5 years. Yeah. Every single other person is going to have to deal with, if you teach a crappy class right now for 5 years, that student is going to talk crap about how badly you did. And he's going to apply that to the rest of the career for when it's time for him to go back. When he's like, oh, he looks at his card and he's like, well, I got to go re-up my PhysTechs stuff. He's going to be like,
yeah, oh, that's going to be awesome. Yeah.
He's going to be like, oh, great. I can't wait to go back and hear these dumb nerds talk about something they don't know about. So I always took that to heart. Handy little trick on video too, for all you aspiring instructors out there. Film it, put it on mute, and then put it at 2 times speed. Yeah. And watch what it is that you do, because you will notice your movements, you will notice your ticks, you'll notice if you do the same thing a lot, where you're looking or whatever, because when things are sped up, your eye gets drawn to them more. The first time somebody ever did that to me as an instructor, I was like, oh my God, not only do I hate myself, but I wish I could unalive myself for what a terrible person I am. That wasn't the first time I've wanted to unalive myself.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you.
I hate it. Oh God, I hate it. I have to edit when I edit these things. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't talk to save my life. I'm an idiot. What is my face doing? It's a whole thing. But I learned how to do that from being an instructor, and that's built into and woven into the fabric that is the physiology career field. And that's something that not a whole lot of people get. And I'll tell you what, when you feel good, and I was a dude that was way back in the day, there were the officer and the enlisted blocks. And I was there was a way that you had to be a 7 level and then you were allowed to teach officer blocks, which was always a weird thing to me. But going through those process and having those officers teach me, be like, no, this is the nuance of this thing. And this is the science part of it. Man, it made you a good instructor. And it was rewarding as well.
Yeah. I always tell, you need to know more than your student, obviously. Right. So you need to know the topic, and then you're only giving them 25% of it. That way, when they ask a question, right, you can pontificate on that. But some people want to dump it all. This is how it all works. And it's bro, you're about to get some questions at some next level stuff that I don't think you're ready for. So you have to be very careful about your knowledge base, because, we as instructors, and I'm sure you guys have been there before, you're critiquing somebody, you ask the crazy questions that students probably won't ask, but you want to make sure they're prepared, because you will get crazy questions and people who are just geeks like yourself, and they're gonna really go down a rabbit hole, and you gotta be prepared for it, because you'll lose credibility quick.
Well, and it's not always beneficial. Let's say that you do know, you just talked about, you have a limited amount of time with these folks. You only get to see them once, and that training is supposed to last for 5 years. So if you spend 2 hours talking with some nerd about a very specific physiological process at altitude, man, does that help the rest of the class? Like, is that going to help these guys apply? Like, does that knowledge help somebody else in the class apply and move forward and actually do their job better? It's a crazy question to ask.
Yeah.
Moving forward, you mentioned deployments. This is one of those jobs that you can get into a deployment if you want, because there are so many different things that you can do inside of the career field, right? You can work at the centrifuge, you can work at human performance, you can work at high altitude mission support, you can be an instructor working at the chamber, you can work as, for instance, Joint Base Lewis McChord has a very, very small physiology footprint. They have one of the smaller reduced oxygen breathing devices, which simulates altitude without going to altitude or without changing the pressure inside of the area that you're in. But you can work in one of those little one-off capabilities wherever, and you can deploy in support of a whole lot of different things, man. Tell us about your first deployment and what you thought going out the door.
Yeah, so at the time, high altitude air mission support HAMS, that's now at Charleston, was spread out to different various units, and that's another conversation why it's better to consolidate. But at the time, I was at Randolph Air Force Base as a PhysTech, but I was trained in HAMS, and so the taskings would just get sent out. Who wants to go, right? And kind of whose turn is it? And my ticket was pulled, and so I volunteered over the other person to go. That was in the unit that was also HAMS trained. I had no idea prior to 2011 who I supported, right? I went on the road, guys with beards and random clothes, a lot of cool and a lot of arteric, right?
A lot of big watches, a lot of dead bird gangs.
The biggest watch, yeah. Like,
a lot of big watches, a lot of Columbia button downs. You're like, what, man, are you guys all sponsored by 511s? You guys are sponsored by North Face? Are those tourniquets in your pants? Are you come sit and relax?
Is that official issue? Like, where do you guys get that from?
Is that shelves with that dumper? Oh.
Everyone's name's Bob. It was the weirdest thing, right? So I go to deployment. I get right on essentially, and then I realized, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I'm doing. This is who I'm supporting, and I was sent there to support a joint task force as a high altitude air mission support technician if they were to ever have to use that capability. I unfortunately never got to do it. My counterpart did. She actually went on a real life mission rescue, which was kind of cool. I kind of wish I was part of it, but I had to stay back in the Joint Operations Center and watch everything from a camera, unfortunately.
Yeah. It hurts, doesn't it? I've been there, dude.
So I was a FOBIT. I never really left the wire, unfortunately, but definitely got the experience in the military, and that's what kind of, I think, almost reblued me. I mean, I saw people get shot. I saw, I had a indirect fire, a 105 millimeter land really close to me, blow up some people, get some shrapnel, and we transported them. I mean, I got to do some stuff outside of my wheelhouse. My title was Assistant Camp Commandant. We were on this special operations camp, and we don't know what to do with you, so here's this title. And so I just basically dealt with the day-to-day operations, the LNs, and that's just how special operations works, right? Like, you might be a PhysTech, but they're like, hey, we have this job we need you to do, and it's called Assistant Camp Commandant, and you're going to go make sure that these, local nationals aren't, Taliban, and you're going to go make sure people aren't shitting in the shower, and you're going to get billioning rooms ready, and you're going to do
the old waffle stomp. You never waffle stomped before? Come on, man.
I just told you yesterday. Straight stepped on a turd. Disgusting.
It really makes my wife mad when I do that, but old habits.
Yeah. You gotta go. You're in the shower.
God. She's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I got Crocs and a little shower caddy." I'm like, "No, I'm gonna go take a poop in the shower, jerk off. I'll be back."
I really miss that life,
I really miss it. Yeah, you know what? What are you gonna do? No, I'm gonna install it out here in Vegas. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a tractor trailer bed or a tractor trailer shipping container. Put it in the backyard. Put some running water to it. Got it. Anytime I want to feel like I hate my life, I'm just going to go sit in that bad boy in 120, get a quick beat session, and then waffle stomp, walk out. Anyway, I'm going to have somebody throw M80s at the side of it, and I'm thinking I'm going to die. Anyway, It's a good time. That's what deployment's like, everybody. That's going to be a whole episode on its own. Jesus Christ.
But good experience. I mean, came out the other end. I did fly a little bit. I used to fob hop just to get some hours in and kind of support. So I helped the loadmasters out and such, but never, like I said, never got the call. Actually, I will say I did do one HAMS mission. There was a PA event where we dropped JPADs, Joint Precision Aero Delivery Systems, as a proof of concept over, I believe it was Kandahar. So I got picked up, PA's there. We went to 25,000 feet and we did these JPADs. Don't know where they landed. Don't know whatever happened, but I've got the pictures and the video from PA, like they sent me, right? Like here, like you can barely see me in the corner.
Don't know if it's a success, but I'll tell you what, my name's attached to it. Let's go.
Yeah. Thumbs up.
Some poor kid catches a frapped-in case of MREs.
Hey, best MRE ever ate though, yeah.
IVO Kandahar. What happened? I don't know. Something fell out of the sky and hit me. You're like,
I wasn't on that mission.
Wonder who that was. I want to talk about the move to officer, right? Because you were a proud enlisted man. You're an E-Dog. You made E5, I think, before you cross-trained. Is that correct?
I did, correct.
What was the move that made you want to go officer? Because, man, I think I know that we've talked about it, and I was lucky enough. We talked briefly. Like, I knew about it when you were going through there because I still talk to Easy and Sean and all those folks. And, man, we always knew that was on your horizon, right? Like, you wanted to go and lead into a different capacity. Was it the rebluing of the deployment that really solidified it for you? Like, what made you want to go and cross over to be a physiology officer as opposed to an enlisted guy?
I'm going to be completely frank here. A lot of it was financial, right? Just from looking at it, right? Like, just like the job was very similar. It was a cool job. Like at the time, enlisted were definitely more hands-on. So I know I was going to lose that when I crossed over, but I found myself getting more hands-on as an officer just because kind of the niche that I found within the community. But I did want to lead from an earlier age. I thought I had a lot to give. I thought I had strong leadership traits and qualities, and I knew that it would take a long time to get to the E7, E8, E9 realm where you really make impact. And I could do it as a lieutenant or captain. I mean, I was a little probably naive because I became a lieutenant and realized you don't have so much say, even if you're prior enlisted, because people see your rank, right? You're like an airman with a degree. But it definitely was, I mean, I saw my mentors become officers and great officers. Like, I can do that. That can be me. And I thought it was just a really good path for me. And going back to the financial thing, it just made a lot of sense financially to have that retirement. And I knew I was going to retire and it'd be, a little bit more than it would be if I, even made it E7 or E8. So kind of
and by the way, totally, everybody out there, I hope you hear what Kaz just said, because it's totally acceptable to say that. It's totally acceptable to go, you know what? One of the big factors that played into this career decision was financial compensation. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to make this move. And I looked at the entire scenario and I thought, am I willing to accept this? Yes, because it's the best for my family. Everybody out there should make that. This should be an option for you, is that you can do a job as an enlisted guy and then allow yourself to be compensated as an officer moving on. Totally, I 100% co-sign. I'm in the back just co-signing this shit.
Well, I think I love what Trent said in the other podcast about like the time. Like, I really value my enlisted time. Like, I'm not going to sit here too much because I'm the best officer ever. All prior enlisted officers are the best ever, because there's some real shitty ones who have a chip on their shoulder. And the kids who are bullied and they want to be, not be the bully. But I really liked my 7.5 years. It really set me up to not have to learn. I mean, things have changed. Hell, we called them EPRs and they were written a different way. Now they're EPBs. Sure. I mean, I don't even know half the, PME courses, the professional military education that enlists have to go through. But it set me up to just understand and value, because I truly believe that the NCO Corps is the backbone. That's not just me plugging that. Like, they're the backbone. That's what makes us better than the PLA, right? The Chinese government. We have better NCOs and better training in that aspect. And that's the core, that's the backbone. And I could just really appreciate that time I spent there. And I think I asked you, Aaron, like, how come you never crossed over? And you're like, I just like being enlisted. I just like doing the job. And I mean, just from what I've seen on the outside, I think probably it's more exhilarating being a PJ versus a crow in many aspects of being hands-on, like treating, doing medicine, and, correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
No, you're totally right. Yeah, because they're different jobs. And I've had people too, we had a great colonel that we worked for when I was getting ready to cross train as a PJ. I think I've told this story on the podcast before, but shout out Colonel Marie Charles. She was a Haitian immigrant. She didn't even live in America until she was 18 years old. She spoke French and Creole and some mix of the two, which was never really like one or the other. But I'll tell you what, when I was getting ready to cross train over, she made me come into her office every day for a week and tell me why I was making this change, as opposed to, she wanted me to become a PhysTech officer. And I even told her then, I was like, listen, I don't connect with being an officer. I don't think I'm set up well to do it. I don't think that I would bring value to it. Number one, like, it's not like, oh, officers are stupid. I don't know if I would do a good job as an officer. I don't know if I had that capability to lead in that regard. I've always wanted to be an enlisted guy, but those are just challenges that you have to overcome. And I'm sure you had those as well, where you had those misgivings, like, am I going to be able to lead? What was the hardest part about the transition from that 7.5 year enlisted NCO to officer? Like, what do you remember just being like, God dang, this is tough to figure out?
I'm glad you asked that. So I will admit I was a really shitty first lieutenant captain. Like I don't know. That's where my chip on my shoulder was. I thought I knew more than I did. I thought I had more power than I did. That would probably be like the black eye of my career, is like that time period. I just don't think I excelled in leadership and really was comfortable in my skin. When you cross over, I mean, a small career field, I was surrounded by my peers. Like I went from Staff Sergeant Cosentino to Second Lieutenant Cosentino overnight, and it wasn't
PhysTech, yeah, for everybody out there, it ain't that big. PhysTech is smaller than pararescue. I don't think the enlisted PhysTechs. I don't think there are more PhysTechs than there are PJs. I think they're even smaller than PJ.
Yeah, we're about 280. I think 300.
Yeah, that's super small. That is a super small career field. Comparatively, security forces has 12,000 people in it. Okay, wow. Maintainers have like 8 to 10K, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And so I definitely struggled. And then as a second lieutenant, I was put as a flight commander, which is obviously kind of a big deal at the time within a chamber unit. My boss got pulled up to be squadron commander, and I had an E5 was my flight chief, which is rare, usually an E6 or E7. And
for sure.
We were both, fairly young, low rank, and we had just a bunch of airmen. It was just kind of just a shit show. Like, I mean, I feel like I learned a lot, but I also didn't really get to be like an officer, like a brand new physiologist where you're just in the class of teaching. I had to like lead more, almost like I was still an E5. Like I was definitely in like the disciplinary action piece and like making sure people are work on time. And I just feel like the flight commander, that's generally not their duties, right? They're kind of more like doing the squadron level stuff, or dealing with squadron commander and kind of higher level stuff. Not to make me any better than anybody else or any E5, but it's just a different role and responsibility. But I still found myself there. So,
well, and it's tough to lead in that sense too, right? Like it's tough to, because it feels the lower level leadership, like people think like, oh, I'm going to harp on people for standards and discipline and baseline, and there is a certain amount of that needs to go on, right? But that's not really transformational leadership.
Yeah,
that is transactional leadership, right? That is, you're going to show up at work on time, or I'm going to give you this LOC. So people show up to work on time just so that they don't get the punishment.
Yeah.
So there is something to be said to establish discipline, but what I'm hearing is you wanted to find a way to lead in a more transformational sense. You wanted to find a way to connect with the people to get, like, it sounds like a dumb thing, but it's like your wife, right? Your wife doesn't want you to do the dishes. She wants you to want to do the dishes.
Yeah,
right?
I love the way you said that. And I think you just kind of summed up what I've always thought. And I want to mentor and lead. And honestly, at the end of the day, my goal for the Air Force as an Air Force leader is to retention. Right? I got a young airman right now who wants to separate, and he's just a rock star. And every day I'm like, hey man, do you want to just raise your right hand and just do it right here? Kind of joking around.
Right.
But like my goal is retention. Like I see good people in the military, I want to keep them. Like, I want the shitbags out, and I'll let the strong, hard-nosed senior NCO deal with all that administrative. That's kind of the wheelhouse and what they're good at. And I'm here I want to just mentor the shit out of people and just be like, hey man, you're really good. Let's fine tune. Let's smooth out these edges and keep you for the long haul because you're a rock star. And if it's on aerospace physiology, cool. I'm all for people cross training. Yeah. If you want to go be an MTL, MTI, go do it. You'd be great at it. Don't want to hold anybody back.
That's, people freak out with me all the time because they ask advice. They're like, oh, what should I do with this? Or what should I do with this? And they're shocked because I'll recommend all kinds of other stuff. I'll be like, have you thought about being a phys tech? Have you thought about being, an RPA pilot? Like, some of these flying jobs are really, really super cool. Like, there are some of the intel, like some of the manned ISR positions that we have, and some of those, sort of like that blend the line as well. Like, phys tech is kind of like 1 foot in science and 1 foot in ops. And, intel is kind of, or, some of these flying intel, it's like 1 foot in ops, 1 foot in intel, and whatever else. They're shocked that I just don't be like, oh, you got to be a PJ or a controller or, SR or nothing else, TAC P or nothing else. I just don't feel that way at all. I think that there's so many beneficial things that you can find inside of these other jobs that'll really help you become a better airman, become a better leader, and just become a better person going forward. I think that there's opportunities in every single Air Force job. People get hyper focused on the cool stuff because, it's cool to go jump free fall. Like, it's cool to go dive. It's cool to go do these things and go deploy and stuff. But it's certainly not the end all be all. And there's certainly opportunities for growth and leadership everywhere, not just in those career fields.
I'll ask a lot of people too, like, what are your goals? Your goals to stay in for 20 years or 25 years and then retire and be done and, do something else. This is a great job, right? Aerospace Physiology.
Oh, dude.
But it's so niche that, like, don't expect to get out. And there's a few, like there's some contract companies, KBR being one of them. They have a San Antonio location, Houston, and then FAA, very small niche. Like you're not going to get out and be throwing job offers. But if you go Intel and you're not sure if you're going to stay in, especially with the new BRS, the blended retirement system, like if you do 10 years, like it's not, you don't have to stay in 20 years to make it worth your while. And then you can go out and work for, any 3-letter agency as long as you get this. So I always ask people, like, what's your goal, long-term goal? Like if you want to just join the Air Force and do whatever, get a job that's going to help you significantly on the outside.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, it's going to set you up, and why not take advantage of some of those programs that we're working here. So let's get some housekeeping out of the way. I know that the PhysTech career field has changed. Their AFSC is no longer, I was a 4MO71, no big deal. That's back when we were underneath the med group. Yeah. No big deal. Just shout out plank owner. What's the new enlisted career field now for aerospace physiology? So for folks out here that are like, holy cow, I never even heard of that job. I want to do a little bit of research. What's the actual AFSC for aerospace physiology technician?
Aerospace physiology enlisted technician is a 1 hotel or 1H, and the officer size a 13 hotel or 13H. And those two are now in the line of the Air Force versus the med group. So what that means is we know are falling under the med group umbrella. So our AFSCs for officers 13H is in the LAF-C category for promotions. Not that it matters much when you're joining, but and then 1H we test amongst ourselves. But the big take home with that is that we no longer have the requirements that the med group put on us as providers. We weren't providing medicine. In fact, we were probably hurting more people through training than we were actually, saving them, for lack of a better term.
100%. 100%. Yeah.
It got really messy because our program was transitioned, our actual program and our training devices were transitioned to ops in, I want to say 2011 or 12, but our personnel, ADCON, administrative, control was still under the med group. So our med group commander would be like, hey, you need to show up and do this med group requirement. And we're like, no, we got to train these pilots, right? And so it took a long time and the climate had to be right. My mentor, Colonel J.D. Roberts, is about to retire. He kind of set the stage for all this. He was the career field manager at the time and was like, hey, I think this is time for us to move. There was huge moves in the med group. So they went from being under AFMOA, Air Force, I don't know the acronym, but they went under Defense Health Agency. So now it's a civilian agency that is now in charge. And they were looking for basically fat to cut in areas that we could cut back in manpower and personnel. And we're like, we saw the writing on the wall. We're like, it's a good time to move out. So we moved into the ops, and which changed a lot is degree requirements and requirements for the AFSCs. Like for officers now, you have to take the Air Force Officer Qualification Test. You have to have you can have a bachelor's degree in more categories than before. And for enlisted, I believe that the what's the test called? ASVAB score. Yeah, I think the ASVAB score changed. I don't know if it got higher or lower, but it's open to more people now. Before it's very, very hard to get in just because there was a lot of nuances with it.
Well, yeah, that, and again, we mentioned the size of the career field before. If you don't know how to ask specifically for this job, you're not going to find it. Like, just by the grace of God and some pure luck is how I found myself into this job. And I was like, oh, well, that looks really, really interesting. I wonder if I could try that out. But so for people out there, if you're hearing it, man, check out the 1 hotel series. So 1H and AFSC. So check out your 1 hotel series. Look for aerospace physiology technician, aerospace physiology enlisted technician. And then the 13, what do you guys, 13 alphas?
13H, 13 hotel.
13 hotel, so they're both hotels. So that's how you start this conversation with somebody that you're trying to, if this interests you and you think that this is something that you want to try, the big selling point for aerospace physiology that I've told people hundreds of times. Number one, you're going to get to work with some great motivated people, like the smartest, nerdy scientist types that you're going to see. And then there's the other side of it where they just want to fly and jump and be instructors and really train air crew. It's a great mix of people, but most of all, if you want to work that 25 career and you don't want to work the same assignment 2 times in a row, you can do it as a phys tech. You can do it in the physiology career field. You can bounce around from being a chamber instructor to working at a unit where you're a human performance tech, and then go and work as a high altitude airdrop mission support technician. And you really have a bunch of different experiences as you can have inside of a single career field. And there aren't a whole lot of career fields in the Air Force that do it as well as physiology does.
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the coolest jobs. When people ask me, it's hard even for my wife to describe, what does he do? Like, I see these pictures of him like jumping out of planes, and the next day, so probably my coolest memory is I was doing a Finney flight in a T-38 with her name was Grit Sawyer Murray at the time, calls Grit. And she was getting ready to transition to the F-22. And we had a 4-ship, 2 T-38s and 2 F-22s. And I'm like flanked by 2 F-22s and like just like flying over Langley Air Force Base, like surreal, right? I mean, like they're like right on my shoulder. And I'm just thinking like, this is the coolest freaking job ever.
Right?
Ever.
Like when would if you just think about it, there's a handy it's more of a thing for logical discourse, but you take things out of context on purpose to see them as they stand on their own. You as a young dude that just showed up, like didn't really know what you wanted to do, and you put high value on things like physical fitness and discipline, you end up crossing over to be an officer. That story to end up in a T-38 flanked by 2 F-22s is just some kid. That had to be surreal for you.
Yeah, sorry, it cut out for a second there. So
Oh, it's okay. It's going to sound great. And then you're going to look stupid because you didn't reply to it. So it's going to look good when we edit it on the back end. And I should tell you, like, Peaches is dealing with a gremlin in his computer right now. There's like a browser thing that popped up like 5 times. He kept texting me. He's like, dude, I got to go. I was like, I'm not going to tell anybody. I'm just going to pretend like you got sick of the conversation and bounced out.
Yeah.
I've had it with this guy. I've had it. The chief is done. Man, Kaz, I want to say thanks for coming on, talking about the PhysTech career field. You come back anytime you want. We'll get into a different topic next time. You can get on here and be like, you know what really grinds my gears? And I'll just give you the topic.
Oh, man. I'll tell you what, my big journey right now is on financial independence and retire early FIRE movement. And so I've just been like cranking up the podcast, like listening. So I've got a whole thing because like I'm looking at airmen like, y'all could just retire at 45 years old.
Why haven't you started investing in a ETF? Where's your goal? Why aren't you diversifying into crypto and gold? Why aren't we making these investments that generate passive income? You don't spend money, you make your money work for you.
Yeah, there you go. See, you already got it.
Come on, son. You know I'm on that game. I ain't trying to work forever, baby.
Shit, same.
As is our custom on the podcast, man, we always ask for advice. So, to those folks that are out there that maybe had no idea what being a PhysTech was, or they don't know if they're right for the job, or, you just want to give your one piece of advice to anybody out there that's listening, like, hey, you can have these experiences too. You just kind of gotta, do these things. What advice would you give to those folks out there?
Don't take no for an answer. I mean, except obviously in some instances, right? Sexual assault, right? Got to put that out there, right? Because like people take things out of context, right? But like I've never taken no, and I don't say no. And I always call myself, I'm like a remora fish, man. I've attached to the shark. I just find any single opportunity and take full advantage of it in anything, right? Like, dude, I would be the best floor sweeper in the world because someone's going to notice. Someone's going to be like, hey, that dude's sharp. Like, let's send him to whatever school over somebody else. So find those opportunities. Don't take no for an answer. And then just continue to find your why in the Air Force, why you serve. If it's financial, cool. If it's I want to travel, which seems to be a lot of people, they say, like people just plug certain lines, like they heard it. Oh, sure. I want to travel. I want to go to school. Like, are you really? Because if you want to go to school, you have tuition assistance. Why are you going to wait to get out? So like, just go back to your why. And that's the big thing for me.
Hell yeah, brother. Well, for what it's worth, man, from watching you grow up from a young 21, 22-year-old dude to the full-grown Air Force leader, MFF JM, and just good man that you are now, Kaz, man, thanks for coming on. I loved it when you were like, hey, man, I want to come on and talk about how awesome being a PhysTech is, just because I get to catch up with you, throwing rap songs at one another and sending people sending each other pictures of each other at the gym when we're there talking shit is good. But, man, this is better. So I appreciate it. Everybody out there, if you guys want to get a hold of Kaz, let us know. We'll get you in touch with them. And
sure.
Do you want to put your socials out there if people want to talk to you about stuff? Or
man, I'm off social media, but I'm on LinkedIn.
Tight.
Not the only one. Yeah, I found it to be poisonous in my life. I know it's important, but LinkedIn is probably in it. I don't even care a cell phone number. If someone wants to hit me up, some random kid from Wisconsin wants to talk to me.
Got you. If you have any questions about being a PhysTech or you want to get to Kaz, just hit us up, and then we will 100% gatekeep. We'll only send you the serious people.
There you go.
For everybody else out there, hey, thanks very much. Train hard. We'll see you next time. Remember to like and subscribe. We're out here.
Thanks, Aaron.